Uh, what do you think, in your experience, was a question that was posed to Jimmy Adams a couple of weeks ago. But what do you think that club players can do in general to improve? What aren't we doing, which we possibly should do?
It depends. Like when you say we, I think it's really hard to throw a blanket on club cricketers because you could have a player who does nothing and just plays to a player who does a lot and does well. I think some of the guys at Crouch End, I think they're very highly motivated and they train well compared to other cricketers, club cricketers, especially in the UK that I've seen. I think guys led by PP last year, and RC and Hiran, I think the group as a whole were really, really professional and really good trainers. However, I think what separates, there's a number of things that separate great to good. I think it's their daily habits, what they do on a daily basis, those 1%ers that I touched on, things that just constantly trying to learn. I think that as club cricketers, you can be limited by the time that you invest or can put into your craft. And your craft is either batting or bowling, or if you're an all-rounder, both. But you've got jobs, you've got relationships, you've got social lives, you've got all these things that you've got to manage as well as your cricket. So I think that those that can put more, I like to use the word invest because I feel like you get out what you put in. So those that can invest more time and energy into their development are going to get better. I just watched a video briefly, I got sent it earlier, and I watched it before I got on here about Steph Curry and the great basketballer, one of the greatest basketballers of the modern era. And they spoke about it when he was a teenager, he went to a Kobe Bryant training camp. And they said, we knew he was going to be the best, not because of his skill, but he was at practice. We had 2 sessions a day. I can't remember how long each session went for, they said. But he was out on the court, they said, while everyone else was in their flip-flops, Steph Curry was on the court for half an hour beforehand shooting. And he'd probably shot 150 balls before everyone else got on the court for their first session of the day. And they said that when the session ended, he wouldn't leave the court until he'd made 5 swish free throws. 5 swish. So not hit the ring, go in 5 swish. So he was setting unbelievably high standards for himself. And then he was working harder than everyone else. And now he's revered as one of the best players ever. So something that I am massive on, and I'm even bigger on than what I was on last year when I was at Crouch End, is you get out what you put in. So the difference between the very best and the rest is the way they learn, the way they approach the game, their attitude, but how much volume they do. And that comes down to planning and reflecting. Like, you don't want to just put in volume for the sake of putting in volume. You need to plan your sessions, and then you need to do the work. The only way you can get better at any skill, whether it's bowling off spin, whether it's bowling leg spin, whether it's running, right, typing, giving, public speaking, the only way to get better is by doing it. So, and then reflecting, learning, and making a plan to get better. So I think that any club cricketer who wants to be better just has to have a plan, have good information, and that's good coaches. And Crouch End's fortunate to have so many good, wonderful people on this call. You've got so many great, knowledgeable people. And then it's about putting in the work, and it's about reflecting and tweaking things. But there's no secret sauce. There's no sort of magic formula. It's just being willing to get in there. I think that there's a great expression about the clouds and dirt. Everyone wants to live in the clouds, live up there, but a lot of people aren't willing to get in the dirt and get their hands dirty. You want to get better, you got to do the work.
It's an interesting point. Kev at Crouch End speaks about there's no substitute for hard work. I think sometimes people think they're working hard and it works. It's working. I think there's also an element of working smart, which I think is what you just spoke about. Being quite specific about what you're doing, keep reviewing, and then continuing that hard work and putting it back in.
Absolutely.
In terms of, we're still sticking with club cricket and your experiences here in the UK, not only at Crouch End. Fitness, there's an argument that at the club level it's not necessarily important. We've heard that argument at times, and sometimes in the county game now, there's more an importance on well-being rather than fitness. What are your thoughts personally on the need for fitness at a cricket club, first team performance type of environment?
Oh, look, I think the fitter you are, the better you're going to function as an athlete. So, but it also goes into your mindset. I personally, the fitter I am, the more mentally focused I am, the more mentally tough I am. I know, I have a deep belief that unless you have a condition that doesn't allow you to exercise, fitness is a choice. You can choose to get up and go for a walk, or go for a run, or go for a ride, or go to the gym. We choose that. Or we choose to not do that. We choose to sit on the couch. We choose to, and everybody says that the easiest thing for everyone to say is, I don't have time. And I say that is absolute bullshit, because you can make time. You can sleep half an hour less. You can sleep an hour less. So fitness is a choice. And for me, if I'm not fit, I'm choosing to be lazy. I'm choosing to not put in the work. So then when things get tough on the cricket field, I know that I've taken the easy option. And so I'm probably going to take the easy option on the field or in life. So for me, when I'm tomorrow morning, I'm getting up at 5. I'm going to go to the gym at 6:30, and I know then that I'm taking action, and that builds my mental toughness. So if a challenge comes to me tomorrow, or a challenge comes to me on the cricket field in the future, I'm like, bang, bring it on. I'm ready. I'm not taking easy options here. So not only does it feel better physically, like I can run longer, I can bat longer, I can therefore make better. I don't fatigue mentally as quickly. But in any choice I have in life, I'm not going to take the easy option. Whereas if I'm not training my body, it's a choice to then take the lazy, easy option. Then I'm going to take the lazy, easy option in life. And I'm not going to live a great life if I'm always taking the easy option, if I'm being lazy. That's the way I look at it. So I think and the great thing about club fitness is it builds camaraderie. When you go through pain together, like I know Pooja's been doing his Zoom sessions, and a lot of people have been involved in them, and he's been doing such a wonderful job. But it builds camaraderie. When you look at the bloke or the girl next to you, or anyone, you say, like, we're in this together. Then when the chips are down and things get tough on the field, you know you've put in the work together. And you can't buy that. And that's why a lot of Justin Langer, the first thing he did when he got the role as the coach of WA, he said, we might not be the best skilled team in the world, but we will be the fittest. And you can look at your mates in the eye and say, we've put in the work, bring it on, we can outlast everyone. And that when things get tough, those fit people, they come to the fore because they've put in the work. They're not going to back down.
You spoke about mindset, growth mindset versus fixed mindset. It's a buzz conversation for the last couple of years. I think you've just described growth mindset of people accepting that they can get better and need to get better and willing to put in the work there. I heard you have I watched one of your videos when you were speaking to Mike Rotherham, sports psychologist, and he was speaking about different methods that they use in the England setup at various stages of development and preparation, where he spoke about challenging players, potentially getting them out of their comfort zone, and the skill of doing that and knowing what's right for each player. Can you share some of what that discussion was about?
Yeah, look, that conversation happened quite a while ago, so I'll have to just jog the memory a bit. But yeah, that's fine. Mike Rotherham is an excellent sports psychologist. He's worked with I think he's the lead psychologist for the England women's team. And he was speaking about he was talking at a professional level, but how can you create in cricket, in sport, in high performance sport or any sport, there's pressure. And when pressure is put on people either rise to the challenge or they falter because they can't handle that moment, that pressure. That doesn't mean they can't do it whenever there's pressure on, but in that moment, they weren't able to stand up to it. So what Mike was saying is they try and create environments that challenge players to get out of their comfort zone and put pressure on them so that they're conditioned and they're used to pressure and they're used to making good decisions under pressure. They're used to executing their skill under pressure. But I think it's a really important thing because in cricket, if we train comfortable all the time, we then go and play and it's hard, then we're going to be out of our comfort zone. So it's about, and that's like there's a saying, really common saying that I hear all the time. It's train hard, play easy. You want to challenge yourself in training. You want to find a way to either put pressure on or make your environment harder so that you can then play easier. If you do it the other way around and you're constantly training easy, playing's going to be bloody hard. And we all know that cricket is a tough game as it is. On the best of days, cricket's hard. So if you can find a way to get out of your comfort zone in practice, the game can be easier because you're more comfortable in that uncomfortableness on game day.
So we're talking about getting people out of their comfort zone, pressure, how to deal with it, all that sort of stuff. Sport in general at a performance level, there can be perceived as a lot of pressure around success and failure. We have to accept, I think, that there is failure, or we can fail. How can we help players to deal with that type of failure, perceived failure?
Sure. Well, firstly, I love an expression that it's not, you haven't failed until you've given up. So I think first and foremost, it's about, in a cricket sense, in a crouch end cricket sense, it's about understanding that the game is hard and we're going to have bad days, and often we're going to have more bad days than good days. So if you can understand that, you can take a lot of pressure off yourself by going, all right, I'm not going to be successful every single day. Like a great podcast, Mike Hussey on the Howie Games. He's a very good podcast host here in Australia. He's a sports commentator. He commentates the Big Bash. Some of you might know him, but he interviews a lot of Australian sports legends, and Mike Hussey's on one of them. And in this episode, he talks about how Mike Hussey asked Shane Warne, how many good days do you reckon you've had in your career? And Shane Warne, 700 plus test wickets, one of the greatest players of all time, thought about it for a while, and he said probably 51% has been a good day. So one of the greatest players in the history of the game reckons 1 in 2, half the time is good, and the other half is not so good or bad. So something that I've come to understand, and I didn't understand this as a young player, and I'm trying to instill this. It's really hard to understand for young people, but the more cricket you play, the more people you talk to, the more you can understand this. But it's a hard game. We're going to make mistakes. So if you can understand that and say, I'm not going to do well every single time, but if I can make my good days great days, and I can make my bad days okay days, and I can make my okay days decent days, and you're just trying to chip in and be a little bit better each time, then you can be good across the course of the season, or you can have a successful season, or you can do well, whatever your terminology is. But if you're trying too hard to do well every single time you play, everyone wants to do well. Don't get me wrong, you want to do well. It's human nature. You're competing. You don't go lob up to, I'm going to have a shit day. I don't care. But if you understand that there's a lot of things out of your control, and then the thing that I think, SJ, I'm sure you talk to your athletes about is just focusing on your process and not the outcome. If you can, like we did an interview with a sports psychologist for one of my podcasts recently, and he spoke about there's so many things that we can't control, and that's not, you don't need to be a sports psychologist to know that. But if you just focus on the things you can control, your environment, your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors, and out of those 3 things, the most that we can really control is our behaviors. Our thoughts we can understand and manage a bit. Our emotion we can be aware of and try and manage through our thoughts. The thing that we can control the most is our behaviors, okay? We might be nervous the night before a game, but we can still eat well, hydrate, try and get to bed early. We might not be feeling great, or we might have a lot of emotion on the day of a game, but we can still get there on time, warm up well, our behaviors is what we can control. When we step on the field, then a lot of things are out of our control. We perform in the subconscious, and we're competing against someone else who's trying to beat us. So we can't, like, if people can understand the logic, it's hard to do. It's really hard to do because we're competitors. We're competitive. We want to get out there and we want to win. If you can understand that logic, I think it can take pressure off. And if you say, look, Virat Kohli, Steve Smith, Joe Root, Kane Williamson, all the best players, Shane Warne, they all make mistakes. They're making mistakes, and they're getting paid millions of dollars to do their craft day in, day out. They're some of the best ever. Well, I'm not quite at their level, unfortunately, and I'm going to make mistakes. Like, I remember thinking, Virat got a golden duck, right? That means, like, I'm going to get golden ducks, like if he's getting golden ducks. So I think it's about just showing up. I think it's just the best players, and like someone like Pratik, for example, the year before, he had a tough year with the bat, and then second game last year he got 100, and it's like he ended up having a really good year last year. But if you asked him at the end of the year before, he'd be like, I'm failing. But it was just part of his process. You can't be successful forever. You have ups and downs. It's about trying to cash in when things are going well. And if you can understand that it's a tough game, I think it can take some pressure off.
I think one of the things that a lot of athletes who are amateur trying to get to the professional level are not necessarily trying. They look at the professional game and the players as this is what it is, and they see the end result and the end product, and all of the things that you're speaking about, the trials and tribulations and how to deal with it. They don't normally get to see the behind the scenes, and I think that's one of the great things that you're doing with cricket mentoring, is that you're taking your experiences that you've gotten personally and taking the stories from others, and you're trying to pass it on to, I'm going to call it the masses, and see if they can use some of those techniques. One of the techniques recently that you spoke about was the 3 R's. Can you help us with that one a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get onto that, great point, SJ, is and I really encourage all of you to listen to this podcast. It's my podcast I do with Chris Rogers and another friend. It's called Under the Lid with Scholes, Buck and Berkey. And our most recent episode, part 1 of 3 parts, we did with one of the Cricket Australia sports psychologists. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot. It also reaffirmed a lot of things I already knew. But there was so much gold in it. This first episode, which we published last Monday, I'm publishing another episode tomorrow. He shared a bit about how when we get nervous or anxious or these emotions, and you just spoke about we see the best players performing and we just think they're the end product. But what this sports psychologist said is when we get nervous or anxious or we have emotions, we think that those players on TV, those great players, and he named Rafael Nadal, he named LeBron James, he named a number of other high-performing athletes, and we think that they don't go through that. But they do. They're humans. They go through that. They just find a way to understand it and deal with it and even use it to their advantage. So, I'd encourage you guys to check that out. I learned a lot. It's an awesome episode. And I think, what you were saying there, I'm trying to share that information. Say, guys, if you're 14 or if you're 21 or you're 30 and you're playing cricket tomorrow, it's okay to be nervous. It's okay to be anxious. Don't stress that you're in that state. Just accept it. And then that can, as the sports psychologist said it, by normalizing that, it can take some pressure off. It can relax you a little bit. So I think that's a really important point. But the 3 R's are something that's an expression I came up with, or a technique I came up with earlier this year, just a story. So I think that there's 3 moments that are important when you're a batter. This is referring to batting. It's the post-ball moment, straight after the ball's happened. It's the in-between moment. It's the in-between balls. And then it's the pre-ball moment. And I was talking for a while about post, in-between, and pre. And then I sort of came up with this expression. The first one is reflect, but you could also use the word review, reflect or review. One of those they both mean the same thing, but they're both an R. So when you play a shot or you execute a skill, you've got an opportunity to reflect and learn. You've got feedback. Did it go where I wanted it to go? Did I execute my skill? Yes, no. What did I do well, etc. You might reflect for longer in practice because you're learning more in practice. In a game, it might be a quick, especially early in your innings, it might be, okay, I've just tried to drive it, I've missed it. This is not a wicket to drive on. I'm going to put the drive away. So you've reflected that it's not a wicket to drive on. You've made a decision that, okay, I'm going to adapt to my game plan. Okay, so you reflect in the moment, straight after the ball. Then you need to relax. Too many people, and myself included, when I was younger, we don't switch off. And then if we imagine this is an analogy that another Cricket Australia sports psychologist used, that Buck Rogers shared with me. If we imagine our brain as a resource, and the analogy is it's a water tank. At the start of the day, our water tank is full. Okay, when we start performing, when we start playing, our water tank starts to drain quickly. We're using our mental energy. We're using our mental capacity. And if we don't have techniques or tactics to turn off the tap at the bottom of the water tank, our resource is going to drain quickly. So there's a lot of people I know that are great for scoring 20s and 30s, and then all of a sudden they get out, they play a silly shot. It's because they're not good, but it could be because they're not switching off in between balls and maintaining that resource, that limited resource that we have. So I think the relaxation piece is really important, and that might be in a game. If you're facing someone who's got a long runner, it might be a 20-second relaxation where you've reflected, the ball's going around the field, the bowler's walking back, and you're relaxing. For me, I like to look into the distance. Whether that's crouch end, I used to look at what's happening on the other fields or see what the boys are doing or whatever. And then as the bowler turns, then it becomes into, this is the final art, and you can use either reset or refocus. And that's about resetting and refocusing your mind and your thoughts and your focus onto the present moment. So for me, I think it's that process: reflect, relax, reset. That allows you to be in the moment when you need to be in the moment, which is when the ball's being bowled. It allows you to learn from what you're doing and formulate your game plan to the conditions. And I'm big on being a thoughtful cricketer, not just being someone who goes see ball, hit ball, whack. Because you can't be adaptable then. It's not a formula that's going to work in different conditions if that's your mindset. So you reflect and you can learn and whatever, and then you need to relax to keep that resource fuller for longer. So they're the three things. And then when I sort of talk about that podcast with the Cricket Australia sports psychologist, in that he spoke about the head psychologist at Cricket Australia. He teaches these 3 R's: review, recover, refocus. And I was like, oh wow, that's like what I'm doing. So I didn't know that. I just had come up with that myself, and that's what the CA sports psychologist is doing. I was like, that's pretty cool.
So it just reaffirms that you've been doing some good work.
Yeah, it's nice to hear that that's what they're teaching. And I think it's not rocket science. I don't know how I came up with those words, but it's just a process that I think I know that work, like in theory works. So if you can execute it, I think it works. Yeah.
Okay, let's speak about emotional intelligence. So everybody is different. Obviously, we're all individuals. People deal with things differently. Their emotions and the experiences in their life, either in the past or current, can affect their emotions. Do you think it's healthy to walk onto a cricket field and be that type of emotive type of player? Or do you think that we need to have a filter, potentially switch off when we do get onto a cricket field to focus?
I think it's a really interesting question, because healthy, I don't know from a physical or a psychological point of view, but I think to perform at your best, you need to be emotionally level. So if you're going onto the field angry, or you're going on the field incredibly upset or frustrated, or you're incredibly heightened in one way or the other, I think it can be detrimental. I think the best players, and I just did a post on our page a few hours ago about emotions. I think the best players, then they don't get too high and they don't get too low. I call it, they don't live on the roller coaster. And that's both from a day-to-day basis and also an in-the-moment process. So a lot of players I've seen, and I was probably guilty of this when I was younger, you hit a 4 and you're like, yeah, I feel good, I'm playing well today, and you get really high. And that can be dangerous, because then the next ball comes, if you're still up there, you might not make a good decision, you might go after the wrong ball and you're out. Or the opposite is, you might play and miss, or you hit one to cover and you shank it a bit, you go, oh, I'm not hitting them very well, and you get a bit low. And then you start getting too negative and you're too low, you're a bit annoyed. And then all of a sudden the next ball's bowled and again, you make a mistake and you're out. So in the moment, I think the best players are very level. They hit a 4 and they'll reflect, they'll learn from it. And then they'll quickly, the ball has probably only just beaten the fielder, and they're already switching off and relaxing, and they're forgetting, they're not getting too high, because they know that the next ball's coming. That ball's gone. And then I think on a macro level, on a whole thing level, they don't go, oh, I scored 100, I'm the best player ever, really, really high. And when they get no runs, they don't go, oh, no good, I scored a duck. And that's what most amateurs live in. When they score runs, they think they're good, their value is high, they value themselves well. If when they don't score runs or take wickets, their value is low and they feel bad. Whereas I think the best players go, I got 100, awesome. I'm getting up tomorrow and I'm getting better. I got a duck, oh well, I learned, I'm getting up tomorrow and I'm getting better. And they don't live on the roller coaster. So for me, you can be an emotional person, but when you're performing, I think you need to try and be level. And when you're thinking about your game and you're trying to be the best athlete you can be, you need to try and normalize that performance goes in up waves. It goes in waves. So trying not to get too high or too low based on your results is what the best athletes do.
That's great feedback from the individual point of view. Let's take it to a team setting. What does a healthy dressing room look and feel like?
I think first and foremost, a healthy dressing room is people having fun and enjoying each other's company. I think if you're not having fun and enjoying each other's company, then it's not healthy. So regardless if you're winning or losing, if you're having fun and you're really enjoying each other's company, you're enjoying each other's successes and you're supporting each other through failures, that's healthy. And then the wins and losses, they look after themselves. So I think when I think of my time at Crouch End, I think it was incredibly healthy because everyone got on so well. Everyone wanted to see each other do well. Everyone got up and about when their mate did well. So from a team point of view, it's about, cricket's an individual, it's a team game played by individuals, but you've got to be happy for your mates. An unhealthy environment is where Pratik gets runs and doubles saying, oh, he's got runs again. It's always Tim. Everyone's happy for him and annoyed at me. And that's very unhealthy. But there was none of that there last year. And the great teams, I think they have people who understand, okay, this is about more than me. It's about how can I, and it's about people saying, how can I give to the team, not take from the team? What can I give this team? What value can I add to this dressing room and this team? Not just, how can I take everything? And it doesn't matter if you're a young or an old player or an inexperienced or an experienced player. If you've got everyone trying to give to the team and be the best they can be, and it might be you're the youngest player, you're making your debut, and what you give is no words, but you give heaps of energy in the field. And then you're really happy for those senior guys who are, like, everyone can give something different. So I think a healthy dressing room is people having fun, people supporting each other, people trying to give to the betterment of the team.
That's interesting because I think that's how Omar and other people would describe the club. A fun place where successes of everyone at all levels is celebrated, is experienced and shared across that group. So not only a healthy dressing room as you've described with the first team last year, but a healthy club for sure.
And absolutely, and just on that, SJ, like I've been involved in a few clubs, and I think Omar and Beefy and Hiran and Pratik and PJ and everyone at the club needs to be commended because I've been in clubs where there's divides between first team and second team, or like the seniors and the juniors, or the first, like there's the thing that Crouch End has is it's a real family club where everyone gets on well, whether you're in the first team or the fourth team. And I remember the Friday night before my first game, Omar and I had a beer and we walked around the ground and he talked to me about the club and why it's important and what the club stands for. And it is exactly that. And it's what the boys, they lived by those values. It's why the club was successful on the field last season and for many seasons before that. And why it's going to continue to be successful is because the people running it from the top down are instilling those values and those behaviours, and then the players are living them. And I think Omar and everyone else should be commended because it's not always the case. I promise you, most clubs I've been in, there's always some sort of friction or divide, and not everyone's happy when someone else does well, which is the case at Crouch End.
All right, let me go back to your travel around the world. So you've been able to travel and have quite a lot of experiences within the cricket world, let's call it. Could you name for us some of the biggest players that you have worked with or had conversations with research, etc., that surprised you potentially of some of the things that they have said? Are there any?
I don't think nothing comes to mind that have surprised me. I think because I've got an open mind, I might, and off the top of my head, I can't give you a direct answer, but I think that things I've always thought, wow, that's interesting, or wow, that's fascinating. How can I implement that to my life or what I'm doing, or pass that on to someone else? So it's not any one particular thing or conversation, but I'm always learning off the 14-year-olds I'm coaching. I'm regardless of someone's status or someone's successes or ego or anything. I'm always trying to learn. So yeah, I've been very fortunate. I've been very fortunate to speak to, play against some great players, some very successful players, have some sort of really good friends in the game who are very successful, but doesn't mean that they're any more valuable as a person than anyone else. And sometimes, like we spoke about with peer-to-peer sharing information, sometimes the best players don't always have the best sort of advice for people because things come naturally to them. So yeah, it's a tough one, but no one in particular, no one thing or person surprised me really, because I suppose I go into an experience with I try and go into an experience with no expectation. And so then everything's a surprise, everything's new, and I don't think, okay, I'm going to get this out of that, I'm going to learn this, because who knows what's going to happen. So if I go in with that mindset, then everything's a surprise, everything's a bonus.
All right, if you had a wish list and you could only choose one person, can you name a past or current player or coach that you'd want to sit down for an hour and have a conversation with? And it doesn't necessarily have to be picking their brains about cricket, just in general. Who would that one person be?
Mate, good question. I think the first person, so two people came to mind. I don't know if this is my final answer, but Paddy Upton, I think, is an excellent coach who speaks a lot about mindset. I think I could learn a bit from him about mindset because that's what I love. I'm sure you know him, SJ, but for those that might not, he was involved with India and South Africa. He's been involved in the IPL in the Big Bash as a coach. Ricky Ponting, I think, obviously an excellent player, but he's been someone who's been able to transition into an excellent coach. And the way he speaks about the game, I love. Like, sometimes the great players, they talk about the game and you don't understand them, or they just sort of, they come across as a bit self-involved. And I think, like off the top of my head, if I gave it more thought, I might come up with someone different. But I think the first person I think of, to answer that question, probably Ricky Ponting, because he's done it so well as a player, but he's also become an excellent coach, and he can verbalise what he understands in the game, which some people can't do.
So Chris Rogers, earlier you mentioned he's a friend of yours, but he's obviously a part of the cricket mentoring family now. He had to go through a delayed transition, I suppose, into the senior team. His record is great. From your conversations, how did he deal with those setbacks in terms of maybe his timelines and where he's expected to be at a particular time? How did he deal with those things and ultimately get to the top still?
Well, look, his life right now could be very different if circumstances were different, sort of for the negative, let's say. So I remember, for an example, we went to a wedding, a former teammate of both of ours. We went to a wedding in 2012, maybe, the year before he was picked for the 13 Ashes. And the Australia race squad had just been picked. And in that side was Khawaja, Hughes, a number of good young batters. And Buck and I were having a beer before the wedding. He's going, what do I have to do? And he was really frustrated. He was really annoyed at the selectors and the system. He's like, I'm way better than these guys. Like, they're young, they're learning, they're going to be good, but I'm ready, I'm better. And he was really, really frustrated. And fortunately for him, a guy called John Inverarity took over as the chairman of selectors. And John's from WA. He actually knows Buck's dad quite well. He had been at the club Buck was at for a little while. And John came in and said, I'm going to pick the best player. I don't care who you are or your age. And And Buck then got selected for the 2013 Ashes series, and he went on to score 5 Test hundreds and have a really good 25 Test career. And that allowed him to leave the game and go into commentating, go into high coaching roles. Because if he hadn't have played those, he'd already played 1 Test when in 2008. He was filling in for an injured Langer maybe. But if he hadn't have got that second part of his career where he played those 24 Tests, he probably wouldn't be living the life he is now. He certainly would have made as much money and whatever. But he could have played 150 Tests if things had been better for him. So I think at times during that 2008 to 2013 period, I think he was really frustrated. And the only way he knew how to respond was score runs. Like emotionally, he was frustrated. He'd get annoyed to his inner circle, but he just went back and scored runs, and he was playing season on season. He was playing in Australia, he was playing in England, he was playing in Australia, playing in England. And fortunately, they said to it, when they selected him for the second time in 2013, they said his experience in English conditions are going to be really beneficial to us. And his experience really helped the Aussies in that series, and he had a good series. I think he's very grateful for his career. He knows that he had a great long career, and he was really lucky. He made made some money out of cricket. He made some great friendships. He's got some wonderful memories. But like everyone, it could have been better. It could have possibly gone the other way. So, but just ultimately, he just had to stick in there and keep going, and eventually got the opportunity.
I think that's a great story for, well, that's his story and international cricket. But I think we can still take it back to club cricket, where there are youngsters potentially, not necessarily only youngsters, but there are players within clubs that think they should be playing in a higher team. But I think he went back to saying he was determined. He asked questions. What does he need to do? But then the currency of runs, currency of runs for a batsman and wickets for a bowler, something that at the end of the day you can always hold it up and say, that's my record, and we can use those. So I think it's still something that club players can look at. I think a lot of times players might think they should be in a team based on potential, but currency of runs, there's nothing that can replace that.
Absolutely. And it's human nature, because like I sit here and I know what I'm capable of, and so does everyone on this chat. So it's like, I know I'm capable of doing well in that side. Like, I should be there. Why is he there? I've done this and he's done that. But ultimately, the best players, they just do the work. They just get it done. And regardless of what team you're in, like if you're doing well, you'll get picked in the next team, or you'll get picked at a higher level. So it's just, it just comes down to your attitude. No one wants to play with a dickhead, but then it comes down to your performance.
So you've played different standards within Middlesex and Surrey, etc., and back home. Most of the players in the team haven't played Premiership cricket before. There've obviously been team success and some individual success in the lower divisions. What do you think is one of the major things in terms of that step up now that the team and individuals should be looking for? If you could give them a little bit of insight into what Premiership cricket might be in comparison to what they've played before.
I think you just got to compete harder for longer. I think in the lower levels, you can compete hard for a small period of time or an extended period of time, and then you get through that period and you can get to the next lot of players who aren't quite as good. But in the next level, you sort of get through that period and then someone else comes, whether it's another bowler or another good batter. So you as a unit have to keep competing for that period of time. And if you can't compete, then they'll win. So I think just at those higher levels, whether it's like when I was playing Prem cricket with East Coast in the Middlesex League, there was no 50-over games. It was all just time cricket, 66, 54, I think it was. And so sometimes like you'd have Chris Peplow bowling 30 overs from one end the whole day. Like they'd bowl a seamer for 2 overs, then Peplow would come on and bowl, wouldn't miss a 20-cent piece. And he didn't quite have a really successful first-class career, but he was an exceptional club cricketer. And then at the other end, you had a good medium pacer and another good spinner. And they only used 3 bowlers for the day. But you just had to keep, you couldn't just compete for 7 overs and then they'd take him off and bowl a second change bowler. he had to compete from his end for 30 overs and then against a good bowler from the other end for 30 overs. So at the levels below that, you can get reprieves, but at that sort of premier level, you just got to stay in the contest for as long as you can. You've got to win the contest more times, and you've got to deal with those good players for longer. And whether it's with the ball, you knock over the top 4 or 5, sometimes they've got good 6, 7, 8, and 9. The wicketkeeper bats at 7 or 8, and he's a good player. Whereas in the lower levels, you knock over the top 5 or 6, and you might be like, all right, and often you do. So it's just about finding a way to compete for longer. And it doesn't mean your skill has to be any better. Like all the boys who were in the team last year that I played with, they can compete at that level. When they're going well, they can certainly compete and win games. It's just about having the ability to do that for a long period of time.
So consistency over time, potentially for the batters, a bit more patience, and similar with the bowlers, potentially. A bit more patience and look longer term rather than what's right in front of you.
I think it's about also taking ownership and saying like, okay, like sometimes when you know you're the best side, you can maybe go, we got this today, someone else can do it. But when you're maybe fighting for every win, or you're not the best side, I think if you've got 11 guys rocking up saying it's on me today, I'm going to win us the game today. I'm going to be the one that if I get in, I go big. If I've got the ball, I'm going to bowl dots. I'm going to do my job. If you've got 11 guys thinking like that, then you're going to be hard to beat. So it's not just patience, but it's just like I think it's the desperation to be the one. And it's not then saying I've got to do it with pressure on you, and that goes back to like, okay, understanding you're going to have bad days. Sort of thinking if I'm the one, if I'm in, it's on me today. I'm going to make it my day.
Lovely.
Scott, thanks for that. As I said, I'm mindful of the time, and we really appreciate you taking time out of Saturday, Sunday evening to speak to us. There are lots of really good gems in there that the team or teams across whichever age group can use, and individuals as well. So thank you for tonight, but also thank you for all the good work you're doing on the internet and providing that information for loads of people across that might not have the access that maybe they should have to best practice, I'd call it. So thanks for that.
My pleasure, mate. SJ, thanks for hosting. Thanks for asking such great questions. And yeah, great to see you at Crouch End. I think that you're going to do some great things there, and the club are very fortunate to have you involved as well. And thanks everyone for giving your time to hear a bit about my story and my beliefs and my philosophies and stuff. So thank you all.